Hi everyone, I'm Shannon and I work on product development for InsightPRM and MoveMyBiz.com. We're working every day to bring you great new sales resources, and we love hearing our customers' success stories and feedback. So feel free to get in touch with us and let us know what you think. Today's webinar is hosted by Larry Dillon. Larry is the CEO of Wendover Corp, InsightPRM, and MoveMyBiz.com. He is here to share with you the 3 reasons sales reps don't follow up on leads. Here's Larry.
Thanks, Shannon. My name is Larry Dillon, and we're here to talk today about the 3 reasons why sales reps don't follow up on leads. Apparently, this is a hot topic. We had a lot of folks sign up for this. Again, if this is, how many people today is this your first time attending one of our webinars? Just put first in the question bar. And while people do that, got a lot of first-timers. Well, welcome. The whole objective of this is to just try to provide you information that's going to help you sell more. As Shannon said, that's our passion in life, is when the thing that fires us up the most in what we do is when one of our customers calls and says, hey, I just closed a bunch of deals from the leads, or that information that you gave me really helped out, or I just closed one of the biggest deals in my career. That actually fires us up more than when we close a deal ourselves. I know it sounds corny and stuff, but it really is. It's a thrill for us. It's what really fires us up. So and I think that's important for you to understand that, because we just want to help our customers and prospects and folks connect with more clients, more prospects, and close more deals. So any suggestions that you have, any topics you'd like us to investigate, anything that you want us to talk about in the future, please email us and let us know what your comments or suggestions, especially suggestions for future webinars. You can always reach me directly at Larry@InsightPRM.com, Larry@InsightPRM.com. I've been doing this this is our 25th year anniversary. We are, looking back, it's always amazing to me that the amount of time that we've done this. We've made 50 million cold calls, and it's just been a thrill doing this. So let's get started on the 3 reasons why sales reps don't follow up on leads. So let's go over today's agenda. I'm going to talk about the facts. First, try to get an idea of how bad the problem is. And I think that, if I'm asking you to spend 30, 40 minutes of your time on one of these webinars, I should be able to tell you what the potential for gain is for you. So we're going to actually give you some pretty good idea if you implement some or all of the concepts that we're talking about, what the potential for gain is. We're going to talk about the current state of affairs in lead handling. And then we're going to talk about how to set more appointments from leads. Again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask them. This is interactive. This is your webinar today. This is really meant to help you out. Here's a stunning statement. This is actually from the Yankee Group. We find the same is true. The majority of leads are dropped or mishandled. How many of you feel that this is an accurate statement? If you think that this is accurate, just give us a yes. If you think it's inaccurate, just give us a no. Oh yeah, Y or N is fine. Y for yes. I think that this statement is accurate. There's 100%. Thanks, Brian. David's, I'm getting a lot of yeses. More yeses, another 100%. So let's think about that. That's a pretty bold statement. The majority of leads dropped or mishandled. And why is that? Can anybody tell me, maybe give me some reasons why majority of leads are dropped or mishandled? Can anybody give me some ideas? There's one. Communication, not seen as a priority. That's a good one. Lack of systems, give up too easily. Bandwidth, have no time to follow up. That's true. Time is a big issue, isn't it? Technology. So a lot of you chiming in, so I think not only are we pretty much all in agreement that the majority of leads are dropped or mishandled, but there are a number of reasons, aren't there? It isn't just one reason why leads are dropped or mishandled. It is selling is a very complex process and requires lots of various steps. And we talk about the fact that salesperson, depending on what company you're at, the salesperson might be charged with setting all of their appointments. So I've got to do my own prospecting, I've got to set appointments, but then I've got to go out on the appointment, I've got to schedule my own appointments, I've got to assess the customer's unique needs, I've got to put a proposal together, I've got to deliver the proposal, and then I do have to close deals, and oftentimes closing deals takes priority, and we talked about in the last webinar that first thing to go is usually the cold calling process. So, and I think that, from listening to your responses that it just really highlights the point that if you think there's one reason that leads are dropped or mishandled, I think maybe a better way to look at it is that there are many, many, many reasons why a particular lead could be dropped or mishandled. This is from a survey that we did business owners, sales managers, and salespeople, and we asked them how much could you increase revenue, top-line revenue, with better business development practices. This was stunning when we got this back. I mean, look, the majority of folks are in that we feel we could increase our revenue by 20 to 30%. Some folks even said increase by over 90%. That is, is a stunning statistic when you start to put it down into dollars and cents. Number one reason why sales reps won't make quota this year. Can anyone tell me? For a t-shirt, or I'm sorry, a polo shirt. Number one reason why reps won't make quota this year. Lack of sale. Well, that's one. Not enough cold calls. We're getting closer. Motivation, lack of follow-up. Lack of accountability, not enough contact, not enough activity. Not enough activity. Who was that? Let's go back to that person. Who was it? Not enough activity. Hey, be honest. Who was the one that said lack of activity? We'll figure it out. We have a recording of your responses. So, but anyway, lack of activity, which basically translates to they didn't set enough appointments, because appointments is how we get deals. So, and lead follow-up, basically, you got to follow up on leads to get appointments. So that is, I mean, it's just that simple, is that setting leads is the key to getting appointments, or working leads, or following up on leads is the way that we get appointments. I tell the story, last year it took 17 attempts to get a prospect on the phone. It came across as a lead on our website. It was a very large organization. Most reps, as you know, don't do a good job of follow-up, but I stuck with it over about 5 or 6 weeks, finally got through to the prospect. I was the only company of my kind that stuck with the prospect and wound up getting the deal because of the follow-up. And it does sometimes take a lot of follow-ups to get somebody on the phone and to get that appointment. And I almost got the deal. Well, I actually got the deal by default because I was the only company that actually stuck with the prospect. And when I finally got in touch with him, he explained that he had reached out to myself and a couple other companies just before he went away on vacation, was away on vacation, came back, was really busy, and then finally followed up with me. So they don't always have to get back to you right away. They're the customer. So it's difficult. 80% of sales reps give up after only 2 attempts. So let me ask you a question. This fact, is this a good thing or is it a bad thing that 80% of sales reps give up after 2 attempts? Do you guys view this? There's one person, Bob. So Bob said that it was a good thing for him. Bob, why is it a good thing for you? If you can tell me why you think it's a good thing for you. So I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn for Bob, but I think it's a good thing because it tells you that most of your competition is going to give up after 2 attempts. So what that means is if I want to outrun or outpace the competition, all I have to do is do three attempts and I'll be way ahead of the competition. If I do 4 attempts, I'll be really far ahead of the competition. So I think it is a bad thing and a good thing. It can be a good thing if you kind of just put the discipline in place to make sure that you're going to outrun the competition. So what's the potential for gain today? We talked about, you're going to take your time to do this. I had a sales consultant working for me. David Parry was my salesperson for London, and one of his clients was a big $15 million, 50 million pound technology company, and they really liked the concepts and ideas, what we call the Wendover way, of all these ideas about sales and sales process. And listen, by the way, I don't take responsibility or credit for the ideas that we have. These are all my humble observations of the most successful companies that we worked with. And so anyway, David Parry was working for this technology company. They really liked the concept so much that they actually approached us and said, listen, we want to make a deal. We want to hire Dave directly for our company. So we made a deal. David worked for them directly. And basically what David did is just implement a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. And they started off as a 15 million pound company, or let's call it $15 million just to make it easier. Can anyone guess? He implemented these things, traded some sales reps, got rid of some low-producing sales reps, and replaced them with a new sales rep. No acquisitions, no new products, no change in marketing budget. Can anyone take a guess of, in 12 months, what the run rate was for that company after 12 months of just implementing, basically following up on leads more effectively and opportunity? Actually, he took them from 15 million to 45 million. 45 million. He tripled their revenue. I know what you're thinking, that's an anomaly. Well, one of the VCs who was involved with this company was so impressed with David, he took him to another company that he had, and that was 60 million, and David took them from 60 million to 180 million. Basically, following up on all the opportunity that availed itself. So in 18 months, he took that company from 60 million to 180 million. Just astounding numbers. So I think that reasonably, by implementing some of this stuff, I think the potential for gain is probably for your organization, depending on where you are in terms of your ability to execute on leads, it could be a 25% to 300% increase in top-line revenue. So either end of the scale, it's significant stuff. It's a matter of looking at it. Let's look at it from a strategic level. One way of looking at it is maybe we don't need more leads. Maybe we need to work all of the opportunity that avails itself to us in a better way. In our recent poll, I asked companies, how many of you have had what looked to be a disqualified lead? In other words, on paper it looked bad. I had an opportunity where my inside salesperson, I was in the commercial furniture installation, moving business, move management business, and we got a lead for a 10-person office moving in a year. and the inside salesperson said, Larry, could you go out on this appointment? So I looked at the paper and I said, well, there are only 10 employees. They're moving in a year. This is a waste of time. We typically don't go out on appointments for deals that small. But the inside salesperson said, you know, I spoke to this woman. She really wants someone to come out. No one else would go out. Would you please go out on this thing? So it was only because my inside salesperson insisted that I go. So I went out, drove into this office park, went into the office building, was guided back to a conference room. They opened the double doors. There were 10 people around the table. They stood up and they said, thank you so much. You're the only mover that would come out to talk to us. I was thinking I was the only one dumb enough to go out. And it turned out to be a little company called Electronic Data Systems, or EDS. Well, it was actually 250 people moving from one location, 175 people moving from another location, moving into one location. When they contacted movers, move consultants, they were always asked how many employees. What they heard was, how many people on your move committee? Because, of course, everyone has a move committee. And their response was, well, we only have 10 people on our move committee. That's what they thought that they were answering. So communication's not perfect. Turned out to be the largest deal of my career in that business. When I sold my moving company, about 25% of my warehouse was storage for EDS. My question is, how many of you have had what looked to be a disqualified lead that actually turned out to be a qualified opportunity? Just put a yes in, or why, if you've had a similar experience. Fred, Phil, Brian. Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some numbers here from some folks of some monster deals that they closed. Yeah, and you just, and that's the problem with business to business, isn't it? It's if so many people have had a similar experience that I've had, then how do you disqualify leads? Because all of my competitors disqualified that lead, and that was my advantage. So that's also part of the challenge. So I think that it's a matter of understanding that any one particular lead, and by the way, I think I said that was the largest deal of my 10-year career owning a moving company. With so many people, and the research that I've done, 80% of the people report that they closed a deal from whatever started off as a unqualified lead. And here's the statistic that's going to blow you away. 25% of the people reported that one of the leads that started off as an unqualified lead turned into one of their top 10 deals of all time. We really I think too often people look at lead management and working leads as a assembly line where we're going to try to disqualify as many people as possible. And that's like the old analogy of somebody walks into the Mercedes dealership in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt and gets ignored by the sales rep, only to find out later that it was the ex-CEO of Exxon or something like that, right? So that's our challenge in business to business. Any one particular lead could be $1 million or multi-million-dollar deal. First reason that sales reps don't follow up on leads. You got to cold call to set appointments, and cold calling is not an easy process. It's a painful process. It is not easy. You're dealing with a lot of rejection. The buyer doesn't have to be honest. They can give you a head fake. We have so many documented cases where we'll generate a lead where somebody's telling us they're definitely moving. We'll send that lead off to a customer, and they'll tell the customer a day later, we're not moving, we're not buying furniture, we're not buying phone systems or whatever, or computer systems. Why do buyers fib or maybe not tell the truth? I don't know. I don't think it matters. I think what we have to just agree is that They will fib, and that's one of the things that makes it painful for us, I think, as salespeople, is that just because someone tells us they're not interested does not mean that they're not interested. It might mean that at that particular moment they're not interested. So all of these things make it a painful process, and it makes it difficult. It makes it more time-consuming. And the question is your technology helping or is it hurting? One of the things that a lot of our clients use is a CRM, and one of the big complaints that we've gotten over the years from our clients is that, we use a CRM, but it's too slow, it's too painful, and often we'll hear from the sales reps that they'll tell us, they won't tell their boss, that we don't use the program. How many of you have found that the technology, that CRMs are actually more painful to the process than it is helpful? Just give a Y or an N. You have to look at that. I would suggest that you maybe outsource the interviews to your sales team, or have some discussions with your sales team and ask them, is it helping our process or is it hurting our process? So you want to make sure that you've got the right technology in place, because you do have to make the cold calls to make contact. Just because a lead comes through, in my example, it was a great prospect, they don't have to answer my phone call, and just because I have to make 17 attempts does not make it a bad lead, but you got to make contact. There are some statistics out there that say that the first person to make contact with a lead, so in other words, let's say somebody is in the market for blue widgets and you sell blue widgets, and they go to the internet and they approach you and 3 or 4 of your competitors at the same time. The statistic is you're 78% more likely to actually close the deal if you're the first person to make contact with the prospect. So I know everybody's got a different opinion about whether they want to be first or last. It seems like one or the other. You got to deal with the prospect hide and seek. We talked about that, warm and cold. I'm interested, I'm not interested. So it's difficult to try to figure out, is this a good prospect? Is it a bad prospect? And I think that that's the thing that we really need to look at and make sure that our technology is helping sales team. And we don't want to forget about the buyer's point of view, because it's not your sales process that's important. It's really getting into the head of the buyers. And we talk sales and talk to sales managers and salespeople all day long. And, even though this is our job to be the coach of this, I think often we lose sight of the buyer's point of view. Second reason sales reps don't follow up on leads. Often we tell our sales team to ignore 66% of viable leads. Can anyone decipher that statement? Many companies literally tell their sales team to disregard 66% of viable leads. Again, this is going to be for this one, sleeve of InsightPRM golf balls, plus a polo shirt, plus a cap. I'll admit it's kind of a tough one. I'll tell you, it's got something to do with timing. Yep, Bob, you're the winner. Congratulations, Bob. You're going to get a sleeve of golf balls, a polo shirt, and a InsightPRM cap. If it isn't this month or soon, you're exactly right that they discard it. Congratulations, Bob. Good job. Here's some interesting research. Only 25% of leads are sales ready. In other words, they're ready to buy right now. 50% need to be nurtured. In other words, they're not buying this quarter or next quarter and so forth. So what we often see, and I talk to clients who are this way, They'll look at leads and they'll say, well, this lead isn't moving for 6 months. I want leads that are closing this quarter. Most leads, whether it's from purchase leads or from your website or from marketing, 50% need to be nurtured. So what we in fact do when we tell sales reps to focus on leads that are going to close this quarter or this month, we're telling them ignore most of the leads. So 50%, so 2/3 of the viable leads, about 25% are not a fit. So about 75% of all leads are viable, and 66% of the 75% actually need to be nurtured. How many of you have a formal lead nurturing process in place? How many of you have a formal lead nurturing process in place? Just a few. A lot of N's, not a lot of Y's. So this is something, I mean, this is money right here. You could literally triple your results by really, think about it. Imagine tripling the amount of new business that you get by really focusing on a lead nurturing process. And if you have a lead nurturing process in place, why don't we think about stepping that up to squeeze more and more deals out of that? The other, okay, thanks Philip. Philip is asking about lead nurturing. So lead nurturing basically, so let me put it this way. You speak to a prospect, they're not ready to be sold, they want to get some basic information. So they don't want to hear about your product or your service, they want information about, like, let's say you sell phone systems. What lead nurturing would be, instead of attacking that lead, you would send them a white paper on the 5 mistakes people make when they buy a phone system, or how to select new voice and data providers. What's the difference between voice over IP versus premise-based system? So basically a process by which you can answer questions that people have who maybe aren't buying for 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months. I hope that answers your question. Philip, you can send me an email, Larry at InsightPRM.com, and I'll send you a white paper that I wrote on B2B engagement marketing, which I think will give you even more information on that. Third reason that reps don't follow up on leads. We're focused on the sales process instead of the buyer's process. Too often, even in my own conversations with, I was just speaking to the VP of Sales for North America for a very large computer equipment company, and you get caught in this whole thing about focusing on the sales process, but the sales process really isn't important. It's really the buyer's process, and making sure that our sales process is properly aligned with the buyer's process. And the challenge with that is that all buyers are different. There are different time frames, different needs, different types of people, right? Some people are auditory, kinesthetic, there's all different, personality types of buyers, and we need to be able to adapt to the buyer's needs versus sticking with our particular sales process. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you don't have a sales process, but I think an open sales process rather than a closed sales process, if that makes sense, is going to be more effective. A sales process that understands and takes into account the fact that buyers are all different. So how do we use all this information to set more appointments? First thing we got to recognize is buyers don't have to be nice. So the first thing is that buyers don't have to be nice. They don't have to tell us the truth. So we need to have an approach when we're working on leads, and instead of assuming that the buyer is going to be nice and the buyer is going to tell us the truth, a better approach, and I can tell you my rock stars out of the 10,000 companies that I've done business with in the U.S., Canada, England, Scotland, Ireland, and Australia, the top 100 or 200, I call them my rock stars, understand that the buyer doesn't have to be nice and doesn't have to tell you the truth. So if you get a lead and they're rude or they don't want to talk to you or they tell you they're not interested, don't be so quick to put that in the dead lead dumpster. Have a process where you're going to go back to that. Simply calling the same lead that told you absolutely positively, no way, we're not interested, calling that same lead back a month later, you're going to find that every time you call them back, you're going to convert more and more opportunities. I've had so many customers who I've explained that to, and they've said, Larry, you know, it doesn't make sense, but I followed what you said. I just booked you know, a very large deal. It took me 4 months to finally get the appointment, but it was 4 simple phone calls, 4 30-second phone calls, continuing the conversation with a prospect. Multi-pronged approach. Sometimes you'll be able to get the prospect on the phone make contact with the prospect by phone. By far, one of the most valuable and potent ways to connect with prospects still to this day. But you should also try email, try a personal note, postcards, brochures. Multi-pronged approach. Every time you put another approach to that, you're going to convert more and more leads. So let's say out of 100 leads, let's say 10% or 15% you're able to convert by phone. There might be another 5% that you can convert by mailing to the prospect. There might be another 5% that you can get by emailing the prospect. So it's not a one-and-done approach, a multi-pronged approach, because think about all the money, time, energy, and effort you spend to either buy or generate a lead. It's not cheap any way you do it. So I would have a formal process in place where you use many different approaches. I'll give you an example. We had a client in Texas, very successful company, phenomenal inside salesperson, very good at converting leads into appointments. Excuse me for a second. Sorry about that. I needed a little drink of water. Phenomenal inside sales rep, consistently converting, 15 to 25% of our leads into appointments, which is a good conversion rate. And I had told his boss, I said, when the leads come in, always send like a postcard. And I said, listen, David, I don't care what's on the postcard. It could be the simplest, most inexpensive postcard possible, but send all the leads a postcard as soon as the leads come in. It's the easiest thing to do. You can get a clerical person to do it, but just send out the postcard. So the lead came in. His great inside salesperson called the lead, and he rarely DQs a lead, but he DQ'd this lead because he was so convinced that nothing was going on. Prospect gets the postcard. 2 weeks later, Dave gets a phone call. Hey, Dave, this is Bob from XYZ Company. I've got your postcard here in my hand, and we've got a big move coming up. Could you come out and give us a bid? David said to me, he's telling me this story. He says, Larry, he says, when I tell you it's the dumbest postcard, he says, it's a picture of me in the warehouse with my foot up on a crate and saying, we do commercial moves and storage. And he said, I'm embarrassed to say, well, he said, we went out and the first deal was a $130,000 move, which is a monster move. He said, I'm embarrassed to say this company used to be one of our biggest accounts. Our contact had left the company a year ago, and I'm embarrassed to say we didn't know that. So now they got the account back, which is probably going to be $500,000-$600,000 over the next 5 years or so for them. So the awesome inside sales guy who'd been working leads for many, many years got fooled, but the postcard pulled it out. So the more layers you have to that approach, the more leads that you're going to get. And again, this is these are some of the things that David Perry worked with. 7 touches for an appointment. Remember what we said, how many attempts the average person gives up after? So all you have to do is have a process in place. And when I say 7 touches, that means if they've filled out a form on your website, if you've purchased a lead, if you've gotten a lead from marketing, 7 touches. My rock stars, the top 100 or 200 company out of 10,000 around the world, all different industries, have this sort of approach, 7 touches. No matter what the prospect says, we continue almost on a 3-week, 4-week basis, constantly touch that client. One of the most successful companies that I spoke to, they've purchased a number of lead services. They use their leads, and literally they will go out to a face-to-face to drop off a basket or a giveaway to a prospect that won't return their phone call. Now, sometimes he admitted, sometimes you go out and absolutely nothing's going on, but extremely successful company. Do you have a process in place to set appointments? Philip wants to know which company that is. No, I'm not going to tell you, Philip. Do you have a process in place for setting appointments? Don't just leave it up to, hey, the leads come in, we give them to the sales reps. What happens to that? And again, that's the kind of thing, if David Perry was here, he would tell you, definite process in place, accountability, multi-pronged approach. So you really need to, and if you have a process in place, can you improve that? Are there other things, are there other layers that you can put onto that process? So let's move away from the one and done approach, like, hey, I hand them to my sales reps, or we make one phone call if we don't make contact. Shockingly, I was at a Fortune 500 company, inside sales team, about 500 people, and they were so proud that their computer system, checked how many attempts it took to get somebody on the phone, and the software automatically disqualified a lead if they didn't get in touch with the prospect in 3 attempts. If the sales rep was not able to get in touch with a prospect after 3 attempts, they would literally automatically disqualify the lead. Any other comments? Phil says that's sad. Tim says that's awful. Yeah. Somebody asked, does that actually mean speaking to the person? Yeah. Well, no, not even speaking to the person. Like if you just made, if the sales rep made 3 attempts, automatically thrown into the dead lead dumpster. It's unbelievable. Hey, how many attempts do you guys figure today does it take to get a prospect on the phone? What's your experience? I'm interested in what you guys are seeing. There's a 10. There's a 7. There's a 20. 5 to 10 emails, 3 to 4. 8. 15. Yeah, it's not easy. It definitely takes a bunch of attempts to get people on the phone. So remember what we learned in the very beginning is that 80% of your competition is going to give up after 2 attempts. So if we do 7 attempts or 7 touches, we're really going to outpace the competition. So what's a good goal to set? I've seen conversion rates of 1% or 0.5%, and it all it depends on your where the leads are coming from. Obviously, if you're just doing mass mailing, from just a generic, if you purchase a generic list, if you're calling about a list, this doesn't apply. This would apply like leads where there's an event, leads where there's a pending event, or leads where they've approached you on your website, leads where they've responded to a marketing campaign and raised their hand. Not if you just purchase a list and do a direct mail. This would be like, let's say you purchased a list of 10,000 names, you did direct mail, and then you got 100 responses. A good rule of thumb is 25 out of those 100 should convert into appointments. So that's the mark if you want to hit that rock star status. Now, it takes a lot of process. It takes a lot of second, third, fourth, fifth efforts to make that happen. But if you want to, this would be like if you wanted to play golf with a professional, with Tiger Woods. What would you need to do that? So this would be the sales equivalent of playing golf with Tiger Woods. It's a good mark to strive for. And again, it depends on where. Again, it's not just if you did direct mail or an email campaign to a general list. It would be people that there's a pending event, something is going on, or they've approached you. And again, nurture leads, don't attack them. If you want to set more appointments, don't forget 66% of the folks that respond to your email campaigns, respond to your marketing campaigns, even purchase leads like ours, 66% of those folks, they want to be nurtured. They don't want to attack them. So if you call up a lead and just attack them and say, I want an appointment, I want to sell you something, you might force the buyer not to be nice or to fib or to give you a head fake. So it's really important to put that lead nurturing process in place. If anyone's more interested in lead nurturing programs, let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about lead nurturing. But we find that most companies ignore these leads, don't have a process in place, and obviously that's not good. And this is where David Perry, and by the way, my rock stars, they'll go after the leads that are a month or 3 months out. They'll, the way they explain it to me is, I'll go head to head with my competition. I'm not afraid. I'll win 55%, 60% out of the time. But what I really love are the longer term leads where I can get in before my competition, preferably before they go to the internet, and develop a relationship in the absence of my competition. So that's one thing that I can tell you that's very different between my rock stars. I've got 3 different types of companies I do business with. My rock stars, my survivors, which are pretty successful companies, they're most of them, and then I've got about 10 or 15% victims, which are usually customers we're going to fire, where obviously nothing's their fault. But let's talk about nurturing leads. Remember, 50% of leads need to be nurtured. One of the things that you can do that's really important is to give them free and valuable information. We talked about white papers, but in those white papers, it's super important. Don't try to sell your company. Don't try to subtly sell your company. Don't try to directly sell your company. Give them the free information. Give them the aha moments. Give them the stuff that maybe you don't want them to know about your industry. But the more honest you are and the more valuable the information, the more they'll appreciate that. A good rule of thumb is for nurtured lead, the first 2 points of contacts are gifts. So for example, we have clients on MoveMyBiz.com where we do an article on MoveMyBiz.com. One of my clients did the key steps to a successful move. So wrote an article about the key steps to a successful move. So when it's a lead that needs to be nurtured, instead of saying, hey, we want to give you, get an estimate, they'll say, the inside salesperson simply says, hey, my name is Frank. I'm calling from XYZ Moving Company. My boss, John Smith, was just recently interviewed on MoveMyBiz.com on the key steps to a successful move. I want to go ahead and send you that link. I think you'll find that article helpful. Just a great way to engage that customer. It's important that you get published. You don't have to get published by MoveMyBiz.com, but get published. If the information is published by a third party, behavioral scientists will tell you that that has 2 to 3 times the impact of self-publishing the same information. So get yourself published. You have your local business journals. It might be a trade journal, but get yourself published, especially on a website, because you can send the link to that. And the facts are is that you're 3 times more likely to get an appointment through nurturing than attacking the lead. 3 times more likely. And there's the other advantage is that most of your competition does not have a formal lead nurturing process in place. So, and this is why the rock stars have intuitively known this for years. I mean, my whole career in doing this, there was always 1 out of 100 that understood this dynamic very, very well. And that's why they light up when I'll see somebody at a trade show that'll seek me out and talks to me about what they're doing. They love nurturing leads and getting in ahead of time. So the idea is that there's lots of ways to generate long-term leads, but once you understand that lead nurturing and companies that don't need your service for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, especially if you can find opportunities before the prospect has gone to the internet. I don't think any of us are under any delusion that as soon as a prospect goes to the internet, and let's say I sell phone systems and I punch in Google business phone systems, boom, that prospect is immediately exposed to 20, 30, 40 competitors at the same time. So now more than ever, figure out sources or ways to generate opportunities before they go to the internet. The internet is great, internet leads are great, but nurtured leads that of companies that have not yet gone to the internet are even better. So one of the sources of long-term leads would be networking, obviously, is very important because you can find companies like, you're at, like, let's say a chamber event and somebody says, we're going to be relocating in 6 months, probably need a new phone system. Obviously, that's a source of long-term leads. But and this is something that my rock stars are bound and determined to find as many sources of long-term leads as possible. They'll also, that doesn't mean they ignore short-term leads. It's just they know everybody's focused on the short-term leads, so they want to go where most people are not. So at this point, I want to open it up to some questions. We don't have a lot of time, but are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions for us? Okay. Awesome. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. My name is Larry Dillon, Larry at InsightPRM.com. We have a whole series of these webinars coming up. Look for them. If you have anyone in your organization you'd like to be put on our mailing list for the webinars that are coming up, if you need copies of the webinar, if you need the transcript, please let us know. My name is Larry Dillon. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I hope you found this useful.